Thanks again for tuning into this episode of the Grit Strength Podcast. We really appreciate your support. If you enjoy the messages and the content that we share, please pause this episode, go to iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, and then leave us a rating or a review. That's how we get ranked on iTunes. That's how we're going to be able to spread this message to more and more people. So pause the episode, go subscribe, leave us a rating, leave us a review. Thank you again so much for all your support. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Grit Strength Podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Ware. This episode is again brought to you by Competitive Greatness. You can check out both of those businesses on all the accounts on social media at grit_strength and at C Greatness Train. That's the letter C, Greatness Train. And I want to apologize for kind of the lack of consistency with the podcast episodes. As most of you probably know, if you do follow our social media accounts, is we've been doing some traveling. We had some different things that kind of came up over the last couple weeks. Really exciting things. I got to go out to New York City and watch a few of the athletes that we work with in the Big East tournament. Got to enjoy that at Madison Square Garden, which was a great experience. And while we were out there, we got the opportunity to work with some great people in New Jersey, record some good content, and then we also got to run a clinic on Staten Island. Got to work with some really high-level athletes out there, and just kind of got a different feel for, what things look like across the country. And even for me, as I start to continue to build these messages and build my coaching style and my training style, I get to learn and see different levels of toughness, different levels of effort, how people do things just a little bit differently. And I'm kind of humble enough to know that I'm really good at what I do, but I also have a lot that I can still learn. And so it was a great opportunity for me to go out and learn a little bit of, how people might do things slightly differently, how some things are, the same, and what works, and, all the things that come in between. So, one of the things that I know I already talked about in last week's podcast episode while I was in the truck was related to effort level. And I've talked about this concept in the past, but I wanted to really hit it a little bit harder on a podcast episode because I think I recorded something way back when on Instagram, just a little short minute-long video about this concept, and then I continue to talk about it with a lot of the athletes that we work with. But when it comes to toughness, when it comes to effort level, when it comes to just being a competitor, what I think sometimes gets a little bit lost in the shuffle, or maybe where the focus lies currently and maybe can be shifted, is this. In a basketball setting in particular, athletes walk into a gym, and I think they have one of two different ways of going about it, or one of two different ways that they feel, especially when maybe you're talking about a training environment that you maybe haven't been to before, or even more than that, like a tryout situation where you're walking into a tryout, you're having to compete against people for spots, and you're kind of leveling yourself up to those that are in there, and you can get a couple different feelings. You can get the feeling of, I feel like I'm better than everybody in this gym. You can also get that feeling of nervousness, like, ooh, this is going to be tough. I don't know, he or she looks like they may have some things they do better than I do. Whatever your feeling would be, here's where I think is a far more effective way to look at any of those situations, and again, can be translated or at least talked about in every line of work, in every situation you could ever be presented with. Find the hardest worker in the room, or in this case, in the gym. So when you walk into a new setting or a new situation, it could be, a networking event, it could be a job interview type deal, it could be a lot of different situations. But again, going back to like a tryout situation, if you walk into a tryout for a basketball team, I would find the hardest working guy or girl in that gym. That would be the first thing that I would look for. And I'm not just going to try to match that effort level or match that intensity level. I'm going to try to surpass it. And that would be my goal the whole time, because everything else, obviously some of that's under your control. You can prepare and get your skills right for a tryout. But once you're at the tryout, you just have to go out and play, and you've got to be confident in what you're going to do. So you can't worry about, the skill stuff, if you're prepared or not prepared. That should have been taken care of a long time ago. You've got to go in there with a confidence level and know that, some of the things, whether it's your shots falling or, making certain plays, some of those things are going to happen in a positive way. Some of them are going to happen in a negative way. You're always going to be doing some things right and doing some things wrong. It's never going to be perfect, again, in anything that you do, but especially in athletics, all of these games are designed to be an imperfect game. That's why people go on runs in basketball. That's why people have good shooting nights and bad shooting nights. And a coach that I always worked with, and he coached me in high school, always talked about, water always finds its level. So you're always going to find your level based on where you're at currently as a player. But what you can always control is your effort level. Always. It has nothing to do with skill. It has nothing to do with how you've prepared for a situation. You can always control how hard you play, how hard you work, and what your effort level looks like. So what if we all did that? What if we walked into every room where there's a competitive setting, something that we're competing for, or even just, everyday life? Because the more that we grow into our roles, into our careers, and into our, situations as athletes, the more we understand that every situation is a competition. I am always competing for something. I am always putting myself out there, putting my abilities on the line to earn certain things, whether it be a scholarship, a spot on a team, whatever it might be. I am always competing, and I always have to be ready to compete. I have to always be at my best. That's why I named my company Competitive Greatness. It's be at your best when your best is needed. And the more you can figure out that your best is always needed, the better off you're going to be in every situation that you're presented with. So think about that. Find the hardest working person in the room. Find that person. Figure out how you can't just match that intensity level or match that effort level, but go beyond it, surpass it, and go a level above that. Because I promise you, again, in whatever setting it is, it's not always going to work out the way that you want it to, but I guarantee you if you commit to that on a regular, consistent basis, it will work out in your favor more often than it doesn't. Again, it's something you can always control, and in the last podcast episode, I know I talked about this, but it's worth noting again. I've trained a lot of really high-level athletes. I've played with a lot of really high-level athletes. And it's no secret that the ones who worked the hardest are the ones that continued their careers for longer, are the ones that saw the most success in whatever way, shape, or form that was. But when I went out to Staten Island and I was working with some of these athletes and I was told ahead of time, these 5 or 6 kids are probably 5 or 6 of the best athletes on Staten Island. And again, New York is huge. Staten Island's a big place. There's a lot of people out there. There's a ton of really good players on the East Coast, in New Jersey, in New York, in Pennsylvania. It's all kind of in that area. But the reason I'm saying that is, these are very gifted athletes that I'm talking about here. And it wasn't that they weren't working hard. It wasn't that they were dogging it, but it was just one of those things where I kind of knew going into it, if they were at the level now where they have an opportunity to play in college and even maybe beyond that later, I wanted to know what their effort level looks like. And I've had numerous college coaches and people evaluating athletes call me, and it's been crazy as a trainer to have people call me, even guys that I don't necessarily coach in high school or AAU, but guys that I train, and girls too, who I'm getting phone calls from coaches who are doing their due diligence on the effort level. It is way too competitive now for all these college scholarships and anything beyond that for you not to work hard. It doesn't work. They don't want to deal with that. They don't want to coach that. When I was talking to some of the Division I coaches this past year as I was going and watching different practices, I had multiple different coaches tell me, we've gotten to a point in our recruiting process where we don't put up with lack of effort. We recruit guys that we know are going to work hard, that we know and we've done our homework on and are going to constantly play hard or constantly going to play tough. They always have in high school because they don't want to spend any time coaching that. Some coaches are bought into that. Some coaches are more than willing to coach effort level because they've always done it, or, everybody's got their own philosophy. But my point would be there's been multiple coaches who have said they don't even try it. There are far too many good players out there to pick somebody who they're going to have to spend so much time coaching effort level that they can't coach anything basketball-wise. They would rather get really good players who they don't have to worry about the effort level as much. They know that's already there. And again, they're going to help push them to that next level of effort. But they know that they don't have to spend a ton of time on that. They can spend more time on the basketball concepts and the basketball skills. So what I told some of these athletes out there was after 5-10 minutes, whether it was them getting comfortable with the workout, whether it was them, still getting warmed up, or, the fact that they maybe take a little bit longer to get going, or they just haven't been pushed as hard as maybe they need to be recently, especially coming off of a high school season. For that first 5 to 10 minutes, I found myself judging those athletes saying, he or she doesn't work hard. he or she's kind of soft, he or she just isn't ready to train today. Well, then on the back half, the last hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes of the workout, I changed my thought process. I changed my judgment of those same athletes because, again, whatever it was, they either figured out the effort level that I was expecting of them, they got more comfortable with what they were doing, they were less nervous, they got loose. I don't know what it was, but that last hour and 20 looked a lot different than the first, 10 or so minutes. And so what I told them afterwards was this, and I've told all of my athletes that I've trained since then the same thing because it's super important. And again, translate this to whatever line of work that you're in. You're not always going to get an hour and a half to impress somebody or show somebody how good you are for a role or how awesome you could be as a player for their program or what your skill set looks like. Sometimes it's only 5 minutes. We all know how first impressions work. In a college basketball setting, when you're talking about athletes who play AAU basketball, who are trying to be recruited at that level, I'm telling you right now, you probably get less than 5 minutes, and 5 minutes is probably pretty generous. You usually get a coach walking by a game who might turn his head, watch for a minute or two as he's passing time before he gets to his next game, and that's all you have to catch their attention. If you're not playing hard, if you're tired, whatever it is, again, they don't care about the excuses. I guarantee you they're going to make a snap judgment just like I did and say, that kid doesn't work very hard. That kid's kind of soft. I'm going to keep going. And they will keep walking. They don't give you an hour and a half. They just don't. Same thing with job interviews. Same thing with any career move you're trying to make. You don't get an hour and a half to show somebody that you're capable of performing in that role. You usually get a 20 to 30 minute job interview. If that works, then you start to get more and more opportunity. But that first impression, that first opportunity you only get a certain amount of time, and it's a smaller window of time. So I think it's so important that everything that you do, every opportunity that you are given, you go into it ready to outwork everybody that you're competing with, ready to outwork yourself in the sense of if I worked really hard yesterday, how can I raise my level today? How can I get 1% better today than I was yesterday? How can I raise my effort level a little bit today than I did yesterday? Compete with yourself if you have to. But this find the hardest worker in the room concept is crucial. Every room you walk into, even if it's just your natural day-to-day setting at work, when you walk in, you're going to start to know and start to develop an idea of, okay, here are the 2 or 3 people that work the hardest. Maybe one of them's in the same role as you. Maybe one of them is in a role above where you're trying to get to or below. Maybe they're trying to get to where you're at and surpass you. Why would you ever let somebody who wants the same things as you outwork you? Why? There is no excuse for that. None. You can always control your effort level. You can always control how hard you work. And if you ever let somebody try to take that from you, try to work harder than you, and set themselves apart just from that, something's wrong. You have got to go into every opportunity. You've got to go into every day that you are given on this earth as a new opportunity to kind of reset the tone, to make this day better than yesterday, and to continue to improve. If you focus on that, you will get to a lot of the places that you're trying to go to. It's not going to happen overnight, but if you can commit to it day in and day out, things will start to happen for you and things will start to fall into place just like I know you hope that they will. So whether you're an athlete, whether you're somebody that's a young professional or a young entrepreneur or somebody who's just trying to find their way in life, focus on that. Whatever your respective room is, whatever your gym is, go into that setting, go into that room. It could be a figurative room or it could be an actual room. Find the hardest worker in that room. Don't focus on trying to match their effort level or match their intensity level. You figure out a way to surpass that. You figure out a way to work a little bit harder than they do right now. So now you become the hardest worker in that room. Once you're the hardest worker in that room, find another room with harder workers. Surround yourself with people who are going to work really, really hard and push you. And then in that next room, find the hardest worker again, surpass that effort level. You continue to do that on a daily basis. Again, with everything that we talk about, it's the same thing. It will be amazing to see where you get to. You will have phenomenal results in whatever it is that you're trying to get results in. Find the hardest worker in the room and surpass that effort level. Thanks again for tuning into this episode. Again, you have no idea how much I appreciate the love and support that all of you have shown to our businesses and to this podcast. If you don't mind, if you didn't already, please go to iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, leave us a rating, leave us a review. It helps us get ranked. It helps us reach more and more people with the messages that we're trying to spread. So again, go back to iTunes, subscribe, leave a rating, leave us a review. We really, really appreciate everything you're doing for us and all the support you've shown.